compassion fatigue and COVID fatigue. Where does one stop and the next begin? Or is that even a right way of looking at it? What do you think, Tara?
Yeah, right. I know it's interesting because when I talk about compassion fatigue with you earlier, Tony, and you're like, but what about COVID fatigue? And so the overlap is really what it seems to be true. There's like what we call interdependence. Interdependence is a goal actually in relationships, that we have an autonomous space and then we have an overlap. So it's a great example. It's like, yeah, these two, they're kind of right now with COVID and our need to be with people, there is this overlap. So
Yeah.
maybe more generally, it would be that crisis fatigue and compassion fatigue will
Yeah.
always overlap.
I think so. Because I mean, at the end of the day, they're all drawing on the same beleaguered and weary person, right?
Yeah.
We have limits inherently.
Yeah. And we talk about it as psychologists, and I know that other health professionals are speaking about like, how do we talk to people when we're all in the same soup?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, I mean, like as an attachment focused therapist, Sue Johnson is like, we're all in the same soup. And so I think of her often where it's like, this isn't anything different. When I touch a client's crisis or somebody else's crisis, I can always touch some sort of crisis inside of me.
Yeah.
It's just that this soup is hot.
Totally. And it's
hot and spicy.
It's hot and spicy, and it's got its thin spots and its chunky spots. So we're all in the soup together, but it's hitting us each in a different way even.
Yeah. And we're fatigued. And so it's like,
fatigued.
Right. So who's fatigued? Who's got this COVID compassion fatigue? We all do. We're all exhausted.
Yeah, I think it's really worth recognizing because I mean, and in an ordinary world, life is stressful enough to begin with. And most of us live with very little margin, right? Very little room for unexpected things to happen.
Yeah.
And then you add a pandemic on in the background, and it's like, well, we're what, 18, 19 months in. Shouldn't we kind of have a new thing going on? But I think the new thing really is when we didn't have a margin before, we're overextended and all of us are fatigued in different ways and to different degrees, but we're all fatigued.
Yeah, we've been tired for a long time, actually, maybe even white knuckling it. So it's like we're all exhausted and in a crisis here.
Totally.
And so what is this COVID fatigue, compassion fatigue? Somebody said to me, people are so sick and tired of red lights. They don't want another red light here. So in regards to lockdown. So that's a statement of COVID fatigue.
Yep.
I don't want to be told anymore. And as we're all in the situation and talking with others about how troubled they are, it's like, I'm troubled too.
Yeah.
So that's some of the compassion fatigue that could be happening for people. And it's important that we are paying attention to that part. That's like, it's kind of like a what about me might be a statement of compassion fatigue. Maybe you, Tony, could have a different statement, because we can feel very selfish when we're trying to caregive to others.
Oh gosh, right. Yeah, this is something that's come up in sessions too. It's like, other people, they've kind of got it going on a little bit worse, but I have to kind of put my thumb down and say, yeah, maybe they've got it going on worse, but you've not got it going on very good right now either. So how do we recognize that, make space for it, and address it for what it is too?
Right. That it's like there's a space to honor our own feelings, and we can't shut off our own pain about this global crisis. And so that's one way to honor the compassion fatigue. And I think what perpetuates it is when we're so busy and we're so focused on caregiving to everybody else that we forget to make space.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing. I think us just having this conversation is saying, you know what, it's okay to admit you're fatigued. In fact, when that is the reality, it's almost reckless not to admit it. Because if we don't admit it to ourselves, we're not going to relate to ourselves in reality. And that's how we do foolish things. That's how we take risks that can really blow up in our face.
That's perfect too, because when are we at risk? It's when we're not tuning into ourselves. And you and I share this belief about getting slow. It's like, if I'm not checking in here,
Totally,
there's always stuff that's going on that could fatigue my ability to compassion,
totally.
because
What?
self-compassion enforces
Yeah,
passion of others, right?
totally, totally. It's the whole, if you're on an airplane, put your own mask on first, right?
uh,
And I mean, we work by trying, our nervous system is geared to try to do as many things automatically as possible. We talked about that red light fatigue, that whole idea, right? All these different transitions, to just kind of do a nod and a wink there too. All these transitions we're going through,
yeah.
um, they don't allow us to do our normal autopilot thing. I think that's a good thing to be able to do autopilot, but we're exhausted having to constantly make choices when we're already exhausted to begin with. We don't want
Exactly.
more choices, more things to look into, more things to wrap our head around. That's exhausting.
I know, and it's so, I love that you said that, because one of our longtime clinicians at Sojourn, Carl Merritt, who's moved his practice now, but I remember him saying to me, like, Tara, if you were a mouse and a big animal was eating you, you'd want to be able to dissociate.
Totally.
But because we're in crisis and we're blurred and we're like, crisis, compassion fatigue, like, what the hell's going on? All of a sudden, we're very paranoid when we notice ourselves just like auto driving it.
Mm.
But auto drive is, again, it's just a natural neurological response.
Totally, totally. So one of the thresholds for counseling is, I mean, we all deal with crap in our life, but the threshold is, when does the crap get really in the way, right? When does it become clinically significant? And one of the challenges right now is when we're in the middle of it, when we're dealing with frontline work, we're we don't necessarily want to open up everything all at once.
Right.
We want to make it through this. There's a time for action, and then there's a time to kind of stop, reflect, and retake things